Hello, my name is Richard Corbett from Emerge by Design, and welcome to my weekly transit report starting on Monday, December 9th through Sunday, December 14th. And we'll be closing this week out with a full moon in Gemini. So, here with the chart today on Monday, and all of my charts are run for noon Mountain Time, except for the lunations. So, I'll indicate that when we get to the full moon. Here we are, Monday, December 9th at noon. And the sun is in gate 26, putting the earth in its polarity in gate 45. So we're still working on a new moon in Sagittarius that we had in early November. Now we had the first quarter moon this past Friday, so we're in the second week of this lunar phase, and so we have the moon growing in illumination every night. And that's always a wonderful time that we may be feeling this building of emotional energy, wanting to push forward, growing in our spirit and emotions with the illumination of the moon. But we do have a few reasons to maybe tap the brakes this week. There's a few interesting retrogrades taking place that we want to look at because they're asking us to take a second look. It's like the old phrase, when you pull out of an intersection, look left, look right, and then look left again. So let's take a look at these. Well, one of the first things about Monday that I really like is that when we look at the sun here in Gemini, and I'll use my annotator here, in gate 26, called the gate of the egoist, we have a very tribal feel at the start of the week with the sun in a tribal gate and the earth in its polarity in gate 45 called gathering together. We may be called upon to offer support to our friends, family, network, or we may be needing a little support as well. But one of the main aspects we have on Monday, building into Tuesday, is that sun in gate 26 is forming a trine with Chiron, still in retrograde, at gate 51, line 5. Now, whenever we see the sun lining up in this supportive aspect with Chiron, we know it's a wonderful time for healing. This is the wounded healer. Whether we need to offer our forgiveness to someone else or we may be asking it back to ourselves, this is a wonderful frequency for our healing from past wounds and limitations. And we still have Pluto in gate 60. And of course, in our last lunar cycle, we were getting a lot of Pluto as he exited Capricorn and moved into Aquarius, but still traveling through gate 60, this gate of limitations. And this ties into a larger pattern that's still happening as well, which is that we had Mars oppose Pluto when Mars was at 29 degrees of Cancer, and Mars moved into Leo, but is retrograde now. And so Mars is going to continue moving retrograde and is going to pass that opposition to Pluto in the backward phase, stop, turn forward, and pass one more time going forward. And that won't be actually till April. But uh, during this pattern with Mars opposite Pluto, while Pluto is in gate 60, we're feeling this aggression of Mars, this power of Mars, lining up with the truth of Pluto in gate 60. So the idea here being, what are any fear, doubts, insecurities, or limitations from our past? You know, when the first opposition happened, Mars was in Cancer, so it may have had to do with the idea of family or nurturing, possibly from family of origin or anywhere in our life. But this idea that we're trying to find this power, and now with Mars in gate 31, the gate of influence, how can we transform this experience from our past into the story of our new truth and influence moving forward? And I think Monday is a supporting element to that story with the sun trining Chiron in that gate 50. Now, the nodes shifted last week. So we have the North node in gate 25, the gate of the spirit of the higher self, the South node in gate 46, the determination of the higher self. But with the North node in gate 25, Chiron in gate 51, and together they're forming the channel of initiation. Now, Chiron doesn't get an activation in the human design system, but I still think it's helpful to take note of his location and think about the story involved with that initiation. And I think that's a large part of the undercurrent of this particular lunar cycle. As I said, we started out with the new moon in Sagittarius, and so it had this very optimistic, we're letting things go from the past, we want to charge out into the future, and that is part of the thematic. However, at the time of the new moon, and still today on Monday, December 9th, Mercury has been moving in retrograde in Sagittarius. Now, on Monday, Mercury is retrograde in gate 9, and Mercury will be in gate 9 through the duration of this week and this transit report. And I really feel like Mercury holds part of the keys to the locks to the frequency of this week. Gate 9 is called the gate of focus. It's in the logical circuitry, and it's in the channel of concentration and determination. And so Mercury is bringing this frequency of communication and analytics to this gate of focus. And so while he's in retrograde, it's this idea where taking our time to notice, to be present to the details, because I think the clues are in the details, in the sense that even though we want to charge forward with this Sagittarian lunation, we may meet some roadblocks. And you'll see some aspects I'll be talking about in some of the coming days. And that's why part of the message I would offer this week is to be present to the details and to look left, look right, and look left again, as I was saying. Now, the other thing well, let me just go ahead and move into Tuesday. With that being said, and with Tuesday, the sun will move into line 3 of gate 26. You can see that that sun-Chiron conjunction will be exact on Tuesday. They're both at 19 degrees. And the moon moving through Aries is going to conjunct that Chiron. So they're both in gate 51 during this sextile. So the moon growing in illumination during this waxing phase, bringing the zeal and energy of the sign of Mars lining up in that 51. Again, there's an energy here that really wants to press forward. Yet with that Mercury in retrograde, that's where I'm offering the caution that it's really a good time to take our time. And with Mars in retrograde as well, part of that Mars-Pluto opposition is that, we're really finding our footing right now. Now, part of what's adding to that story, I believe, is that we also have Jupiter currently in gate 35, and we still have Neptune in gate 36. So we're getting the channel of transitoriness, nicknamed a jack of all trades. But this archetype of this particular channel speaks to emotional experience and wisdom over time. And Jupiter, being the benevolent, good fortune planet, being in gate 35, the gate of progress, this is a wonderful place for Jupiter. And he may bring us progress, but he's in retrograde right now. And so I think, again, I would call it a time of measured progress, sort of the old left foot, right foot, left foot, right foot, while he's in retrograde. And he'll be in retrograde, moving all the way back through gate 35. He's in line 5 as of Tuesday here. He's going to move all the way back through line 1 and actually go into gate 16 for a couple of weeks at the very end of January, actually. Let's see. Jupiter will be in retrograde. It goes into gate 16. January 27th will be in gate 16, line 6, the gate of skills, until he's moving forward again and will come back into gate 35 a second time on his forward motion on February 12th. And we'll go through all 6 lines again and finally exit gate 35 on April 7th. So it's that February 12th until April 7th when Jupiter is doing its movement forward through gate 35. Now, gate 36 will be activated this entire time period, currently by Neptune, But even by the end of that time period, Neptune will move out of gate 36, but the north node will have moved into gate 36. So we're going to be having this channel of transitoriness for the next 4 months. And so we are certainly in an experience. There is great potential wisdom to be offered. I think the Sagittarius lunation that we're in currently is offering us the hope and optimism that we may come out better on the other side. But due to the Mercury retrograde, the Mars retrograde, and that Jupiter retrograde, it really is a time of measured, deliberate, and focused progress. And not getting too frustrated if it doesn't feel that way every day. We are going to have this solar plexus defined in the transit energy for everyone. So we're going to see the ups and downs of the cyclical nature of life, but there is opportunity with a measured approach. Okay, let's go ahead and take it into Wednesday. Okay, as we move into Wednesday, there's a very interesting configuration. Actually, before I get to that, I will just mention that on Wednesday, through the morning hours, these charts are for noon Mountain Time. The moon will be at gate 3, line 6 at noon. So all through the morning hours, she will be traveling through gate 3, the gate of ordering, but that's putting her in the channel of mutation with Pluto. And so I think that that might be another hit where we're still feeling the nagging doubts or the nagging pull backwards while we're going through this percolating process of individual mutation. Additionally, there's a very interesting configuration. It's happening here on the Wednesday chart, but I'm going to go ahead and move it into Thursday so it's a little bit easier to see with the aspects. With the sun in gate 26, line 5, as of Thursday, is forming a half square with this Pluto-Venus separating conjunction. A half square can be very irritating here, right? And we're talking about that Pluto in gate 60 and Venus in gate 41, the gate of contraction, but it is the pressure to have a new experience. Now, that Pluto and Venus separating conjunction are in a square and a half to that Jupiter in gate 35. And they're also, Venus is forming that opposition to Mars in the gate 31. And the Mars is in a trine to that retrograde Mercury. So what does that mean in plain English? Well, the idea is that there's a process going on here. We've got square and a halves, oppositions, and trines tied up with some very powerful frequencies. And I think with that Mercury retrograde and the other couple of planets is the idea again that it's very important to not get out in front of ourselves. I think being present this week to the details, and just watching and waiting, and of course, always using our personal authority found in our human design body graph, but to recognize that there's a very important evolution and mutation taking place within each one of us. There is a healing process. There is a letting go. We are moving into new territory, and we can feel a little impatient with that. And I think it's the retrograde planets that can give us that sense of irritation that I just want to be done with it. I just want to move on and put all this in my past. But we need to be present because there are important details that are emerging with our focus that are going to support us in our future direction. Now, as we go into Friday, this will be the sun's last day in gate 26, line 6. And the moon will have moved into Gemini, where that full moon is going to take place on Sunday. And the moon will be forming a trine with that Pluto. And so we're in the last couple days before the full moon here. And I think that there's some emotional connection in a supportive way of where this limitations gift may be emerging. What is coming? What is effervescing to the surface in any particular circumstance that this storyline may resonate with you, that there's something that may emerge here. And of course, we're in Gemini with the moon, so it can be very communicative. It's very busy as we're growing into where we're heading with this full moon coming. On Saturday, the moon is going to form a conjunction with Jupiter in that gate 35. And so I wanted to emphasize that gate 35 earlier because this is really going to be a long-term part of the story over these next few months. Where is the progress? How are we moving into a new emotional wisdom based on the experience and the patience that we may need to be present to our particular situation? And what is our next step forward? But Mars is communicating at gate 31, also in that retrograde, that it has the potential for future influence. As Mars goes backward, and will go back all the way into Cancer and move forward again, Mars will be coming back to this gate 31. And so again, we're in these couple longer multi-month storylines that are in their stage of development. It's like being in the middle of the movie right now. We're not quite sure what the ending's going to be, but if we can hold fast to our optimism of the new moon that we started in Sagittarius, to be present to the details and the focus that can be offered with Mercury in retrograde, Mars is also gaining strength and power in the retrograde phase. So I think it's an idea of being patient right now to see where this goes, following our strategy and inner authority to see where this kernel of emerging truth may come from challenges from the past, but ultimately become part of our new story that we have in terms of our authenticity and our truth. So as we go into Sunday, this is the only chart I have this week that is not run for noon Mountain Time. This is actually at the time of the full moon, which is 2:01 a.m. on Sunday, the 14th. The sun will have moved into gate 11, line 2, putting the Earth in its polarity, and gate 12, line 2, and also, of course, having the full moon opposite sun there, conjunct with the Earth, but in the opposition to the sun in gate 12. Now, this is called the gate of caution. It's part of that individual circuitry, that part of us that is our deepest, most inner core of individuality, authenticity, inspiration, and truth. And so having a full moon in this gate here, that's why the story I'm sharing is that this is a very personal story, that there's something evolving here that has to do with our individual mutation of creative expression. Something that we're passionate about, something that we've been yearning for, maybe for a very long time. And there's something about this full moon that is related to, again, the Mercury in retrograde at the time of the full moon will still be in gate 9, the gate of focus, but has moved all the way back to the foundational line 1 in a trine to Mars in that gate 31. So I think for the full moon, there's a message of being present to the process with patience and focus on what the opportunity where the lunar cycle started, of how it may be expressed in this gate 12 of individual mutation. It's a design of a social being, but it can be open or closed based on the cyclical nature of the current chemistry. But it definitely has to do with this passionate way of sharing our truth and authenticity. So I think in that sense, it's certainly a very beautiful full moon. I think they all are. I hope I was able to illustrate that we have several longer term patterns that we're in the middle of right now. And so until we get some of these planets moving forward again, we're just going to see how it unfolds. So I'm going to leave it at that. I hope you enjoyed this. Thank you for watching and have a great week.